Why is it that the mind so easily surrenders to comfort, distraction, and indulgence, yet struggles to maintain focus, effort, and discipline? Why is it simple to scroll endlessly, postpone the difficult, or avoid responsibility, but so difficult to act consistently toward what truly matters? The Stoics understood this centuries ago. The obstacle is rarely outside of us. It lives in the mind, in the impulses that seek ease over purpose. Energy fades, motivation wavers, and yet the things that shape a life, discipline, mastery, meaningful action, demand persistence. Every choice, every habit, every deliberate action becomes a test of internal strength. It is not the world that prevents progress, it is the mind, untrained and undisciplined, yielding to fleeting comfort. Strength is forged in resistance, in showing up when effort feels heavy, when circumstances are imperfect, when distraction whispers. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When the mind learns to act despite its desire for ease, consistency becomes a skill rather than a struggle. Each small, deliberate step accumulates into a foundation of unshakable confidence. The call to act when the body is tired, the mind distracted, or the circumstances inconvenient. This is where true mastery is built. And gradually the power to shape life from within replaces reliance on fleeting motivation or external conditions. Think about the moments when life doesn't go as planned, when the alarm goes off, but you feel exhausted, when a project falls behind, or someone questions your choices and all the weight of doubt presses down. Most people quit or postpone because they've built their habits around perfect conditions, high energy, clear focus, and uninterrupted time. But true confidence, the kind that doesn't waver, is forged in imperfection. If you only succeed when life is easy, you've never truly succeeded at all. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Real mastery comes from acting when conditions are chaotic and difficult, the walk you take when exhausted, the call you make when uncertain. These are the moments that build an unshakable foundation. Fleeting motivation is unreliable. What matters is the structure you've built, the routines that operate regardless of how you feel. Energy becomes secondary to systems, preparation, and unflinching commitment. Confidence, once earned this way, is no longer dependent on external conditions. It is engineered. Even when you know what must be done, your mind will resist. It whispers excuses, amplifies discomfort, and conjures 1,000 reasons to wait for a better moment. But consistency is rarely about perfection. It is about persistence. You learn to separate the chaos outside from the order you can create within. This is not ignoring reality. It is responding deliberately rather than impulsively. On days when the body is tired or the mind is cluttered, small actions compound into progress. A single step forward becomes proof that control is internal. Epictetus once said, "We are not disturbed by events, but by the view we take of them." How we interpret difficulty defines whether we crumble or grow. Each challenge is an opportunity to prove that your capacity is not dictated by circumstance, but by discipline. When you act under imperfect conditions, resilience is built quietly. It is not flashy, and it rarely feels dramatic in the moment, but the mind remembers. Over time, the accumulation of small, deliberate choices forms a muscle of confidence. It does not panic when plans fail or deadlines loom, because it has been exercised under pressure repeatedly. Success is not having perfect days. It is choosing to act despite imperfection. The call that seems inconvenient, the task that feels exhausting, the conversation that scares you, these are the arenas where self-mastery is proven. When chaos arrives, it does not destroy you because you have already trained in it. The subtle power of these moments is that they teach you to value process over outcome. Growth is rarely linear, and waiting for ideal conditions is the fastest route to stagnation. Each small act of courage under stress, each choice made when fatigue and uncertainty are present, builds confidence from the inside out. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Facing difficulty consciously, rather than avoiding it, illuminates the parts of yourself that have been dormant. These areas, once understood and engaged, develop into strength. Confidence then becomes independent of anyone or anything else. You begin to meet challenges without fear because your foundation is internal, built on deliberate choices. But doing the right thing consistently isn't just about showing up. You must understand what you are replacing. Every habit, every action serves a purpose. Scrolling through your phone first thing in the morning might give comfort. Avoiding a difficult task might temporarily reduce tension. If you remove these habits without understanding their function, the mind will fill the void, often with something easier, less productive, or even harmful. Awareness is power. Ask yourself, what need did this habit serve? Replace it with something that fulfills the same function in a productive way. Meditation can replace aimless scrolling. A short walk can replace the urge to distract yourself. Each deliberate replacement strengthens trust in yourself. Over time, these small, consistent choices accumulate into unshakable confidence. Action without reinforcement is fragile. The mind needs acknowledgement to sustain effort. Celebrate small wins. Track behaviors rather than waiting for distant results. Writing an email, completing a call, or taking a step toward a goal may feel minor, but these micro-victories compound. Recognizing effort, even symbolically, strengthens the mind's association between action and progress. Confidence grows quietly, rooted in tangible proof that you are capable, not in external validation. All of this comes together in a web of discipline, reflection, and deliberate replacement. Acting under imperfect conditions, replacing old patterns consciously, auditing your actions daily, removing indecision, and building resilient habits allows you to transcend fear, distraction, and self-doubt. The quiet mind, prepared for the chaos of life, moves with precision. Power originates internally in the design of your actions. That is dangerous confidence, the kind that does not waver because it is grounded, trained, and intentional. Finally, confidence is not a destination. It is a system. It is not about feeling fearless every day. It is about creating structures that make fear irrelevant. The world will test you. Pressure will rise. Distractions will appear. Failures will happen. But if you have designed your habits, trained your mind, and audited your actions, nothing can stop you. Step by step, day by day, you become someone who acts, wins, and persists. Not because life is easy, but because you are prepared for anything. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Each deliberate action compounds into a mind that is unshakable, precise, and calm. If you seek to live intentionally, to strengthen your mind and sharpen your focus, consider subscribing as a daily reminder that your growth is your responsibility, and your deliberate actions are the foundation of a life guided by purpose and mastery. Sometimes the pressure feels unbearable, and the natural tendency is to look for shortcuts or temporary relief. The temptation to quit is strongest when the stakes are highest and when the discomfort is most immediate. But it is precisely in these moments that self-discipline becomes sacred. I once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." When you take action despite resistance, you reclaim the time and energy that would have been lost to hesitation. You begin to understand that deliberate action under pressure is the most efficient route to growth, and that confidence is a byproduct of sustained effort, not a sudden feeling. It is also important to recognize the difference between motion and progress. Busy work, reactive responses, or performing only when it feels convenient, does not build the inner fortitude we are describing. True action is intentional, aimed at mastery rather than mere completion. Each decision to act, each step taken in spite of exhaustion or distraction, compounds into a mind that can withstand disruption without faltering. This discipline eventually rewires your perception of difficulty itself. What once seemed threatening now becomes a measure of opportunity. Your mind grows attuned to seeing chaos not as an obstacle, but as the natural environment in which skill, resilience, and confidence are forged. Each setback becomes a signal to act, each uncomfortable moment a training ground. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Examination here is active, reflecting on every choice, every response, every hesitation, and adjusting in real time. This continuous reflection transforms fear into action, uncertainty into structure, and hesitation into mastery. By repeatedly stepping into this cycle of deliberate effort under imperfection, you begin to construct a version of yourself that is impervious to random circumstances. You understand that the world will always test you, and that waiting for ideal conditions is surrender. Each small act under duress is a beginning, a brick in the foundation of relentless confidence. When you internalize this principle, you are no longer tossed by external forces. You are no longer reliant on luck, motivation, or approval. The mind, trained and disciplined, becomes the source of strength, and confidence transforms from a fleeting emotion into a permanent, engineered state. But doing the right thing consistently isn't just about showing up. It's about understanding the space you leave behind when you remove an old pattern. Every habit, every action serves a purpose, even the ones you think are meaningless. Scrolling through your phone first thing in the morning might give a sense of comfort. Avoiding a difficult conversation might temporarily ease tension. The problem is that when you simply remove the habit without understanding its function, the mind instinctively fills the void, and more often than not, it reaches for something that is easier, more immediately gratifying, or even detrimental to your long-term goals. Awareness is the first step toward mastery. If you can pause and ask yourself, what was this habit actually doing for me? What need did it fulfill? Then you start to see the hidden logic in your behavior. Replacing a habit isn't about forcing discipline blindly, it's about giving your mind a better alternative. The replacement doesn't have to be monumental, it just needs to satisfy the same underlying drive in a way that serves your growth rather than undermines it. Meditation can replace aimless scrolling. A walk can replace the impulse to reach for a snack when stress spikes. Writing a single line toward a goal can replace the avoidance of a task that feels too heavy. Each conscious choice slowly rewires the mind. When you actively manage the functions of your habits, you teach yourself that control is internal, not external. The mind begins to trust you because it sees consistency in your responses. You're no longer a slave to fleeting desires or impulses. Instead, you are the architect of your actions. With each successful replacement, confidence grows, not because you feel invincible in the moment, but because you've stacked a series of small victories that prove your capacity to yourself. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." Each time you replace an old, unhelpful habit with something that aligns with your purpose, you are choosing to become stronger, more resilient, more capable. It's easy to underestimate the power of small, deliberate replacements. You might think that skipping a habit here or substituting one activity for another is trivial, but over time, the effect compounds. Consider the morning ritual you build. Choosing to spend 10 minutes journaling instead of scrolling social media doesn't feel transformative on day one. By week 4, that 10-minute act creates a sense of calm, focus, and intentionality that carries into every other choice you make. The mind begins to expect this structure, and resistance fades because the new habit satisfies the same drive the old one once did, but with far better outcomes. Replacing habits also changes the emotional landscape. When the mind is left empty, discomfort rises. You feel anxious, restless, or tempted to return to old patterns. But if you've consciously chosen a replacement, the discomfort is addressed constructively. Your mind learns that progress does not come from avoidance or fleeting relief, but from deliberate action. The chain of replacements forms a feedback loop of empowerment. Each time you notice an old habit creeping back and redirect it towards something better, you strengthen your internal authority. The brain begins to anticipate these choices. You are no longer fighting your own impulses. Instead, you are leading them toward outcomes you control. Confidence emerges naturally, not from avoiding difficulty, but from navigating it consciously. The more consistently you replace and refine, the more seamless and automatic this process becomes, until deliberate choice is embedded in the structure of your day. This process also allows you to tolerate discomfort without surrendering to it. Avoidance might feel easier in the short term, but growth requires leaning into what is uncomfortable, replacing the escape with purposeful action. Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Each time you confront a habitual response and redirect it toward growth, you are literally strengthening the neural pathways that govern self-mastery. The more you practice, the less tempting the old patterns become, because the alternatives are satisfying, accessible, and aligned with your goals. Ultimately, consistency and confidence are built not by sheer willpower, but by creating a system of thoughtful replacements that respect the mind's needs while steering it toward purpose. When you understand what each habit is really doing, and you replace it with something that fulfills the same function in a productive way, you build an internal system that works for you rather than against you. Actions become predictable, intentions become reliable, and confidence becomes a natural byproduct of the environment you've intentionally created for yourself. Next, you need feedback, fast, clear, and honest. Most people stumble not because they lack effort, but because they are blind to what needs fixing. Without feedback, actions become guesses, and guesses slowly erode consistency. You can push yourself tirelessly, but if you don't know what to improve, effort alone will not lead to growth. Reflection is not optional, it is essential. At the end of each day, pause and ask, what worked? What failed? What small adjustment can I make tomorrow to move closer to my goals? Each answer is a tool, a stepping stone, a signal that guides your next move. When you track your actions instead of waiting for results, you regain control over the process. Outcomes are delayed, unpredictable, and often influenced by factors beyond your command. What you can control is your behavior, your focus, and the steps you choose to take each day. By auditing yourself honestly, you turn uncertainty into clarity. Confidence is built incrementally. It is not the sudden triumph of immediate success, but the quiet accumulation of lessons learned and applied. Fast feedback also prevents wasted effort. When you pause to assess what truly moves the needle, you eliminate redundant or unhelpful actions. Small, deliberate corrections prevent compounding errors that could derail your progress over time. Each day becomes an experiment, each observation a chance to refine your approach. Rather than seeing mistakes as failures, you start to see them as data, raw, invaluable insights that tell you exactly where to focus next. This mindset transforms frustration into empowerment, turning every misstep into a lesson that strengthens rather than weakens. The habit of reflection also sharpens awareness of your own tendencies. You begin to notice the distractions, excuses, and emotional impulses that consistently pull you off course. By documenting these patterns, you create a map of your behavior, revealing where strength and weakness coexist. Over time, this allows you to preemptively adjust, to design your days in a way that minimizes friction and maximizes deliberate action. Epictetus once said, First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Understanding your behaviors through feedback aligns your actions with your intentions, creating a bridge between who you are and who you aspire to be. The power of reflection is amplified when combined with honesty. It's easy to justify or rationalize missteps, to soften the truth about what you avoided or delayed. But honesty is what turns feedback into mastery. Facing the reality of your actions, acknowledging shortcomings, and identifying concrete improvements develops a mind that is resilient, discerning, and self-reliant. Over time, this creates a mental ecosystem where confidence is no longer fragile because it is grounded in reality, not wishful thinking. Success is no longer a roll of the dice. It is the natural consequence of deliberate, informed action. Feedback also shapes momentum. When you notice what works, you reinforce it immediately. Even small victories, when acknowledged and understood, compound into a sense of forward motion that carries you through days of doubt or fatigue. Momentum is built less by giant leaps and more by a steady sequence of tiny, intentional steps. Seneca once said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Daily reflection allows you to recognize both endings and beginnings, to iterate and improve continuously, ensuring that each day is productive and intentional. Reflection prevents stagnation by keeping your mind engaged in adaptation. Without assessment, you fall into autopilot, repeating actions that may have once worked, but no longer serve your objectives. By continuously reviewing outcomes and processes, you maintain flexibility, adjusting your strategies without losing sight of your long-term trajectory. It is in this cycle of action, observation, and adaptation that true growth emerges. You begin to operate with precision, clarity, and purpose, even in situations that previously would have left you frustrated or uncertain. Ultimately, the act of feedback transforms effort into skill and repetition into mastery. When you know what to refine, each decision carries weight, each action is deliberate, each day is an investment in competence and confidence. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." By auditing yourself daily, you tap into that source, building confidence that is not brittle or fleeting, but durable, earned, and self-sustaining. Over time, this practice of reflection and adjustment turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results, creating a foundation that supports every subsequent challenge, every ambitious goal, and every test of character. Now consider the burden of indecision. Every time you pause, hesitate, or debate whether to act, you drain your willpower without even realizing it. Each second spent in uncertainty is energy diverted from execution, leaving you exhausted before any real progress is made. Confidence is quiet. It doesn't argue with itself or negotiate endlessly. It moves decisively, calmly, without needing constant reassurance. There is a clarity that emerges when you commit fully, when you remove the option to waver. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Preparation is not improvisation. It is a deliberate alignment of intention and action. By deciding once and removing repeated choices, you liberate your mind from the mental friction of constant deliberation. Commit to your schedule, your actions, your standards, and allow no circumstance, no mood, no temporary doubt to dictate your effort. This is not rigidity, it is strategy. Each decision made ahead of time becomes a framework that supports every action you take. The power of this approach lies in how it conserves and directs energy. When you stop negotiating with yourself, you stop draining your focus on trivial questions. Your mind becomes free to operate at peak efficiency, to execute with precision, and to respond to challenges without hesitation. Each task becomes less about choice and more about method, less about debate and more about deliberate movement. Confidence grows quietly in these moments because it no longer relies on external affirmation or fluctuating motivation. Indecision is a thief that operates subtly. You may think you are weighing options carefully, but in reality, hesitation is consuming time and mental resources you will never get back. By pre-deciding and removing unnecessary options, you transform the mind into a tool of clarity and strength. Even when unexpected obstacles arise, you operate from a position of certainty rather than doubt. Every action taken from this place compounds into a rhythm of competence that becomes instinctive. There is also a psychological effect to this approach. Once you commit to a decision fully, you shift your relationship to fear, hesitation, and distraction. These forces no longer feel insurmountable because your focus is anchored in deliberate choice, not fluctuating emotion. The act of deciding once transforms uncertainty into opportunity. It allows you to move forward without questioning every minor detail, without being paralyzed by hypothetical outcomes. In this way, decisiveness is not just practical, it is liberating. Your daily schedule, your habits, and your priorities are strengthened when you remove indecision. Every repeated choice you eliminate is energy preserved for meaningful action. The more you practice this, the less mental friction you experience, and the more naturally confidence emerges. It no longer requires conscious effort. It is embedded in the structure of your day and in the habits that you've intentionally created. The mind, freed from repeated small battles, becomes capable of taking on greater challenges. This principle also applies to how you interact with people and circumstances. When faced with decisions about relationships, work, or personal projects, pre-deciding your boundaries, responses, and standards allows you to act consistently. You no longer react impulsively or allow temporary feelings to override long-term intentions. Instead, you operate from a place of self-mastery. Every interaction becomes intentional rather than reactive, and confidence grows because your actions are aligned with your values, not the shifting whims of circumstance. Finally, consider the compounding effect over time. Each decision made once, each unnecessary choice removed, builds a mental architecture of efficiency and clarity. Your mind becomes a tool that operates with purpose and precision. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." By removing indecision, you master your inner environment, and from that mastery arises a confidence that is quiet, steadfast, and undeniable. It does not demand attention, and it does not falter in the face of chaos. It grows silently, accumulating with each deliberate, well-directed action, until it defines the way you move through every day. Even with decision and reflection, consistency falters if you don't understand the baseline. It's easy to perform when energy is high, when focus is sharp, and life feels cooperative. But true growth is measured in the moments when circumstances are against you, when motivation is low, and everything seems to resist your effort. Building habits that survive bad days is the cornerstone of unshakable confidence. External events will always be unpredictable, but the way you respond to them is within your control. Recognizing this distinction allows you to act deliberately rather than being tossed about by circumstance. On the most difficult days, ask yourself, what is the absolute minimum I can do that keeps momentum alive? A single step forward, no matter how small, is a demonstration of mental strength. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be complete. You may not finish the full workout, solve the entire problem, or have the ideal conversation, but showing up in some capacity maintains the rhythm of progress. By doing even the smallest action consistently, you are telling your mind that your commitments are non-negotiable. That small motion is what compounds over time into something formidable. The power of maintaining a baseline is that it protects you from the tyranny of circumstances. Life will throw challenges, interruptions, and unexpected demands. Without a minimum standard, you risk losing momentum entirely whenever conditions are less than ideal. But when you know that even the smallest effort counts, you remove the excuse of waiting for the right moment. You begin to understand that action is not contingent on mood, energy, or comfort. It is the choice to move forward regardless. Over time, this principle instills a quiet certainty that no external force can shake. Confidence is not built on sporadic bursts of effort. It is forged in the repetition of small, deliberate actions performed even when they feel insufficient. On good days, when energy and focus are abundant, stretch beyond the baseline. Take the time to expand your effort, to deepen your engagement, to push a little further than yesterday. The difference between those who falter and those who endure is not in talent or opportunity, but in the willingness to maintain presence through both bad and good days. This dual approach ensures that consistency is resilient, capable of withstanding both resistance and abundance. This approach also trains the mind to tolerate discomfort without surrendering to it. When your baseline is set low enough to be achievable in challenging circumstances, you reduce the mental friction that comes from facing obstacles. By taking manageable actions in adverse conditions, you build an internal proof system. Progress continues even when the world is unpredictable. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." Each small act under imperfect conditions is a brick in that hidden order, creating structure in the chaos and allowing confidence to flourish quietly, unseen but undeniably real. Small, consistent actions cultivate momentum that is invisible in the moment, but undeniable over time. The mind learns that even minimal effort produces continuity, and that continuity breeds competence. One day, the collection of these minor, stubborn actions transforms into a force that carries you forward, even when motivation is absent. The act of showing up itself becomes habitual, a built-in safeguard against inertia. Each repetition strengthens the neural pathways that guide disciplined behavior, making the mind resilient, predictable, and capable of sustained focus. The essence of this practice is preparation for imperfection. On days when everything aligns perfectly, the baseline may feel trivial, almost unnecessary. But it is precisely this redundancy that ensures you remain effective when conditions are difficult. Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." By committing to action no matter the circumstances, you fortify mental endurance. You cultivate the confidence that comes not from comfort or ease, but from knowing that progress is possible under any condition, and that your mind and habits are strong enough to carry you forward. Ultimately, it is the combination of baseline consistency and deliberate expansion on good days that produces dangerous confidence. The minimal action ensures survival. The stretch action ensures growth. Each step, however small, is a demonstration of control over the mind and body, a statement that circumstance does not dictate outcome. The cumulative effect of these deliberate, stubborn actions transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary resilience. By understanding your baseline, respecting the necessity of small, achievable steps, and expanding effort when conditions allow, you create a system of progress that no challenge can dismantle. But action without reward is fragile. Humans are wired to seek satisfaction, acknowledgement, and progress. Effort that feels invisible or thankless quickly fades because the mind unconsciously measures value through reinforcement. Even the most disciplined will struggle when daily work leaves no trace of accomplishment. That is why small, deliberate victories matter. Each time you reach a milestone, however minor, you create evidence that your effort produces results. Tracking what you do, rather than waiting for external outcomes, ensures that progress is visible, tangible, and motivating. Recognizing and celebrating small wins is not indulgence, it is strategy. Writing that one email, completing a single call, or taking a step toward a larger goal may seem insignificant at the moment, but these acts accumulate into momentum. Each success sends a subtle signal to the mind that action leads to achievement. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Acknowledging your effort illuminates patterns of persistence and effectiveness that would otherwise go unnoticed. It creates a feedback loop where action reinforces confidence and confidence encourages further action. The value of reinforcement is not just psychological, it is structural. By recording and marking progress, you create a map of competence. Your brain begins to associate discipline with reward, even when the reward is symbolic. A simple checkmark, a journal entry, or noting a completed task builds a sense of accomplishment that compounds over time. These micro-rewards are accelerants. They turn habitual effort into a sustainable rhythm that does not rely solely on motivation or external validation. Without them, even the best-laid plans can falter. Reflection also plays a critical role in reinforcement. Noticing what you did well and where small improvements can be made sharpens your perception of progress. It converts raw activity into purposeful practice. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." By consciously acknowledging effort, you train the mind to focus on agency rather than circumstance. Each recognition of achievement, however minor, reminds you that you are capable of controlling the elements within your influence, and this builds a durable form of confidence. Reinforcement becomes more powerful when it is paired with intentional tracking. Measuring behaviors rather than waiting for distant outcomes shifts attention to what is within your control. You cannot guarantee a sale, a result, or a recognition from others, but you can ensure that the work is done consistently and properly. Tracking behavior allows you to see patterns, understand what works, and adjust what doesn't. Over time, this forms a system where competence is visible and self-assurance grows naturally from evidence rather than hope. Even symbolic rewards carry weight because the mind responds to acknowledgement. A completed checklist, a small note of achievement, or recognition from someone you respect validates effort in a meaningful way. These markers create continuity and resilience, reinforcing the notion that your actions matter. Seneca once said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Recognizing small victories is a form of preparation. It strengthens the mind to seize opportunity when it arrives, because the brain has already experienced the satisfaction of completion and persistence. Confidence thrives not only on major successes, but on the accumulation of small, reinforced actions. Each micro-victory is proof to the mind that you are capable, that effort is meaningful, and that consistency yields progress. This is how quiet, resilient confidence is built. You are training the mind to trust itself, to value deliberate action, and to perceive that every step taken has weight. The result is a momentum that sustains you even when motivation wanes, when conditions are imperfect, or when challenges seem insurmountable. Finally, consider that the system of reinforcement is what turns ordinary effort into extraordinary resilience. When action is acknowledged, tracked, and celebrated, you create a psychological infrastructure that supports sustained progress. By reinforcing each step, no matter how small, you are cultivating habits that endure, building a confidence that is self-sufficient, evidence-based, and capable of carrying you through uncertainty. It is through this careful combination of effort, recognition, and reflection that confidence becomes not a fleeting feeling, but a permanent, structured state that grows quietly, yet powerfully, with every intentional action. All of this comes together in a web of discipline, reflection, and deliberate replacement. The pieces we have built individually, acting under imperfect conditions, replacing unhelpful patterns, auditing daily actions, removing indecision, and maintaining habits that survive both good and bad days, begin to interact and reinforce one another. The mind becomes like a finely tuned instrument, capable of responding with clarity to whatever circumstance arises. You start to notice a shift. Fear no longer dictates your choices, distractions lose their grip, and self-doubt diminishes because each day reinforces the evidence of your capability. When the mind is prepared in this way, even chaos cannot disturb it. There is a quiet precision in every move, a sense that you are not reacting blindly but navigating with intention. Obstacles that once seemed overwhelming become manageable because you have trained yourself to operate from a foundation of consistency and resilience. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." By facing difficulty deliberately, by consciously shaping responses instead of avoiding discomfort, you transform uncertainty into strength. Each challenge becomes a rehearsal for mastery rather than a threat to your stability. This internal power is subtle but unmistakable. Confidence generated in this way does not rely on applause, recognition, or external validation. It grows quietly, imperceptibly, as your actions align with purpose and principle. You learn to trust the structure you've created, the systems that no longer depend on fleeting moods or inconsistent motivation. Each step reinforces the next, and over time, the cumulative effect produces a presence that others sense before they see it. Your mind, trained in deliberate action and reflection, becomes a fortress, and you move through life with the calm assurance of someone whose power originates internally. The real strength lies in the intentionality behind each action. Every decision, however small, contributes to a network of reinforced behavior that sustains momentum and builds resilience. Habits are no longer accidental. They are deliberate instruments that shape outcomes and character alike. This type of confidence is different from bravado or superficial certainty. It is grounded, trained, and durable because it has been tested repeatedly under imperfect conditions. Each day that you show up, take deliberate steps, and reinforce meaningful actions, you are compounding strength. You are shaping a mind that anticipates challenges rather than fearing them. You become capable of making decisions that matter, not impulsively reacting to circumstances, and your presence carries the weight of someone who has cultivated internal order. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here is the act of moving forward deliberately, even when fear, uncertainty, or chaos are present, and freedom is the confidence that emerges naturally from that choice. Deliberate replacement of old patterns plays a critical role in this transformation. Habits that once drained energy or reinforced self-doubt are swapped for actions that support growth and reinforce competence. Over time, the mind begins to anticipate productive responses, reducing friction and increasing efficiency. Even small victories, consistently reinforced, accumulate into a powerful internal momentum. The more structured your response to life's unpredictability, the less external factors dictate your state of mind. By systematically replacing old behaviors with deliberate growth-oriented actions, excellence becomes woven into the fabric of your daily life, and confidence emerges as a natural byproduct. The removal of indecision is equally vital. Every hesitation, every unresolved choice consumes mental energy and weakens resolve. By deciding once, setting your standards, and committing to action, you reserve cognitive resources for execution rather than deliberation. Each deliberate choice simplifies subsequent decisions, creating a chain of efficiency that frees the mind to focus on meaningful progress. This clarity reduces anxiety, diminishes self-doubt, and allows confidence to flourish quietly but powerfully. Ultimately, dangerous confidence is the product of repeated conscious effort in imperfect conditions, structured reflection, and the creation of resilient habits. It is a confidence that does not waver when circumstances shift because it originates internally from the design of your actions rather than external factors. The mind becomes a self-sustaining engine of precision, persistence, and calm assurance, It is quiet, deliberate, and unshakable, cultivated through discipline and reflection. By mastering these practices, you develop a presence that carries authority, focus, and resilience, and you move through the world with a certainty that is not dependent on luck or circumstance. Finally, realize that confidence isn't a destination, it's a system. It is not something you suddenly feel one day, nor is it the absence of fear or doubt. True confidence emerges from structures, habits, and routines that make fear irrelevant, because the mind is trained to respond deliberately rather than react impulsively. The world will always test you. Pressure will rise, distractions will appear, and failures will occur. But a mind that has been disciplined, observed, and prepared can navigate these challenges with quiet precision. Each habit, each small victory, each deliberate choice compounds into a framework that supports action even in chaos. The essence of this system is preparation. You cannot rely on fleeting motivation, luck, or raw talent, because those are unreliable and inconsistent. What you can rely on is the structure you have created for yourself, the daily practices that have been tested under imperfect conditions, the conscious replacements of old patterns with productive ones, the removal of indecision, and the deliberate reflection on your own behaviors. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." By cultivating disciplined, intentional thought and action, your mind adopts a resilience and confidence that is self-sustaining and independent of circumstance. Step by step, day by day, the repetition of these actions trains the brain to anticipate effective responses instead of being swayed by distraction or fear. Even when setbacks occur, your response is not panic or withdrawal, but measured action based on systems you have designed. This is why the most capable people appear unshakable. They do not rely on emotions to guide them. They have built a mind that produces action regardless of external conditions. Over time, confidence ceases to be a fragile feeling and becomes an automatic byproduct of consistent, well-designed practice. Even when challenges feel overwhelming, the system you have built ensures that you respond rather than react. You are not dependent on energy levels, mood, or external conditions. By designing habits that work under both good and bad days, and by auditing each action to understand its impact, you have created a mind that can operate effectively in any environment. The accumulation of small, deliberate steps underlies every great achievement, and confidence grows quietly in the background, unnoticed but inexorable. The deliberate practice of reflection, replacement, and reinforcement creates a feedback loop that continually strengthens your competence. Each success, no matter how minor, becomes evidence that the system works and that your effort produces results. Recognition and awareness of these incremental wins are not indulgences, they are necessary catalysts. Mastery over yourself also transforms the perception of risk and uncertainty. Decisions that once felt intimidating become manageable because the systems guiding your actions remove ambiguity. Each habit, replacement, and reflection strengthens the mind's ability to anticipate challenges, reducing the psychological burden of fear. Ultimately, confidence is the product of relentless, thoughtful application. It is built not on circumstances or temporary inspiration, but on the daily disciplined choices that define who you are. Step by step, these habits form a foundation that makes fear irrelevant, distraction manageable, and hesitation impossible. Over time, you become someone who acts, wins, and persists, not because life is easy, but because you are prepared for anything. Every day, every decision, every deliberate action compounds into a state of quiet, resilient power that is unmistakable and unstoppable. Even when confidence is structured, deliberate, and resilient, there is one more layer that separates those who endure from those who merely survive: the ability to embrace discomfort as a teacher rather than a threat. Life will always present challenges that feel unfair, overwhelming, or beyond your control. The mind naturally resists pain and uncertainty, but avoiding them limits growth. By leaning into discomfort and observing it without judgment, you gain insight into your own capacity. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." True confidence is demonstrated in the act of moving forward when everything inside you wants to retreat, when fear whispers that the safest option is inaction. Discomfort is also a measure. It signals where your habits, skills, or mindset are being tested. Each moment of unease offers an opportunity to learn about your strengths and limitations. By noticing how you respond, you can refine your approach, strengthen weak points, and build resilience. It is not about seeking pain or suffering unnecessarily, but about understanding that the growth you desire is often hidden in the spaces that feel difficult. This awareness shifts the perception of struggle from something to dread into something to engage with intentionally, as a tool rather than an obstacle. Resilient confidence thrives on repetition in these moments. Each time you choose to act despite discomfort, you reinforce the structure of your habits and the reliability of your systems. You create an internal evidence bank that proves to yourself that action is possible even when conditions are far from ideal. By approaching discomfort with deliberate action rather than avoidance, you are training your mind to remain composed, disciplined, and capable under pressure. The result is a subtle but unshakable confidence that does not require external validation or perfect circumstances. This practice also refines judgment. When you face challenges intentionally, you begin to see more clearly which actions are essential and which are distractions. The clarity that emerges from confronting discomfort is invaluable. It allows you to prioritize, focus, and allocate energy effectively. Over time, your responses become less reactive and more precise, guided by insight rather than impulse. Another effect of embracing discomfort is a heightened awareness of control. You realize that while external events cannot be dictated, your choices and your effort are always within your domain. This understanding frees you from the illusion that confidence depends on circumstances. You learn that true power comes from the internal environment you cultivate, not from external approval or ease. Each act of persistence in the face of challenge reinforces the principle that your mind is the source of stability and your habits are the framework that sustains it. Over time, consistently engaging with discomfort transforms it into opportunity. What once triggered hesitation, anxiety, or avoidance becomes a signal to act, to test your limits, and to expand your capacity. By reframing struggle as information rather than threat, you align yourself with the natural rhythm of growth. Finally, embracing discomfort integrates seamlessly with all the other principles you have developed. Deliberate action, reflection, replacement of old patterns, removal of indecision, and the reinforcement of small wins. It completes the system by ensuring that no circumstance, no matter how adverse, can destabilize the structure you have created. Confidence becomes not a product of external conditions or occasional inspiration, but a constant, reliable force generated from within. You move through challenges with precision, clarity, and calm assurance, knowing that the mind trained in this way is prepared for any test, any obstacle, and any uncertainty. When the mind is structured, habits are resilient, decisions are decisive, effort is acknowledged, and discomfort is embraced, you achieve a rare state, dangerous confidence. It is quiet, steady, and unshakable. It does not need to be displayed. It simply exists as a consequence of the systems you have built, the choices you have reinforced, and the deliberate engagement with life's inherent unpredictability. Plato once said, "The beginning is the most important part of the work." Each deliberate action, each small step, each moment of courage under discomfort is a beginning that compounds into a life of mastery. You are no longer defined by circumstance, fear, or hesitation. but by the strength, resilience, and consistency you have cultivated. Step by step, day by day, the mind becomes a fortress, and confidence evolves from a fragile feeling into an enduring, self-sustaining state of being. Remember this: confidence isn't given, it's earned through the choices you make, the small actions you take when no one is watching, and the discipline you carry into every challenge. Step into your power, take control of your mind, and act with intention, because the world will test you, but you are stronger than any circumstance. If you want to take this further, watch the next video on the screen and see how to transform these principles into unstoppable action every day. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal and for committing to growth, reflection, and mastery.